This morning's ancient witness comes to us from Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 through 19. To Adam, God said, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return."
There's lots of stuff down here. You might be wondering, I haven't been here for a while preaching. And I tune in off and on via Zoom. I was blessed and privileged to be the minister of this congregation for a number of years. In fact, I grew up in this church and left for a long time and came back. So it's wonderful to be back. And it's kind of odd to me, even, that this is the passage that I'm preaching on. It's a strange and not really a happy passage when you think about it. So I want to explain that to you a little bit, and you'll see that we've got a theme going. I do have to tell you, just as an aside, one of the great blessings of doing worship in this particular congregation is that you really get to work with a team of people. I mean, it really is a team effort. So I'm talking to Kathy, and I'm explaining to her, I've got this kind of weird idea for a service that comes partly out of a different service that I did, but now I kind of can't let it go. And partly it involves vermiculture. It involves worms. And she's like, well, we can work with that. So we worked with that all week. It's been absolutely delightful. So you, Guy, and we're working with the theme of simple gifts because the passage has to do with curse, but we also are looking at blessing. So we have curse and blessing coming up. And if you look up front, we have some of the gifts from our garden, the Zakarison Bliss Garden, and from Kathy, and you see she even made a worm. So we are fully settled to explore this topic. So I was recently doing a service, and I was diving deeply into the idea of blessing and what is a blessing. And what started to get interesting to me as I thought about this is, first of all, that I think we've kind of lost this sense of blessing. You hear people, sometimes I see it when I'm looking at social media, people kind of saying, I was just blessed with a new car. Well, I don't know. We get, like, blessing becomes kind of like good luck. And sometimes in the age of social media, it's kind of, to be honest, a way that we can brag about something. It's like, I got this good thing, and if I say I was blessed with it, I'm not just like, look at me, I'm so cool, I just got this new thing, So it's complicated. And yet we also, I think, know kind of in our bones when we see the real thing. We know that experience of blessing, and oftentimes it's very unexpected. And there's another side to this idea of blessing when you start to look at it biblically, and that's the side of curse. That where there are blessings, there are also some curses. And that sometimes is harder for us. If you ask the average person what is a curse, they'll think about Harry Potter and a wand and Lord Voldemort and a curse, ka-chung, That's kind of the idea of a blessing and a curse. And of course, as you can imagine, biblically speaking, it's much more complicated than this. And so that's what I want to explore with you a little bit today. And what does that have to do with worms? Well, we'll get there. So this passage that we heard today is early on in the curse area of the Bible. It's often known as the curse of Adam. And you might know that if you're reading Genesis, what comes before this is Eve gets cursed. The snake gets cursed. And then we have this curse of Adam, but it's actually not a curse of Adam, it's the curse of the ground. It's the curse of the ground that happens here. And this is an interesting and complicated relationship because you might know that the word Adam is a word that means humankind. And it's closely related to the word Adamah, another Hebrew word, which is the word for specifically clay. So we have Adam being created out of Adamah by God, and we have this relationship between humankind and the earth. And it's not just rich, beautiful soil. It's clay, which is something on the Palouse we kind of know about clay. We'll think about that a little bit too. So what happens in the curse of Adam is that he becomes separated from the earth. There is a distance that is created, and instead of the earth being that which has been life-giving, which has been his DNA, so to speak, there's alienation, and there's distance, and there's separation. And this is really true of this early curse section in general. Some of the things that make humans the most human are said to now create pain and create distance and separation and sorrow. I mean, even for the poor snake, the snake's curse is to be a snake. I mean, that's not so bad, but you know, it's like now he's got to struggle with being a snake. So it's a complicated and difficult passage. And what it sets up to come in the future is this sort of endless longing for something that was connected and in union and in harmony that seems to not quite be right. And part of the separation is that the work of being Adam is to try to heal this separation, to be invited to come back and to heal this distance and this separation. And it's not going to be easy. Adam doesn't have an easy task ahead of him, because what we're told in this passage is that, as I said, you know, what he's working with is clay, and the clay is going to produce thorns, and the clay is going to produce thistle. But the way that humans will come back into balance is to be able to work with this, to find a way. I think about Martin Luther King talking about making a way out of no way. You're going to have to find a way to make it through this condition, and not just to survive, but eventually to thrive. And there's another confusing little twist in this passage that you kind of have to get into the weeds with the Hebrew of it, but let me explain it a little bit. And that has to do with it in biblical Hebrew, it's blasphemous to say that God cursed. You can't put God or a name for God next to the word curse. So you have to euphemistically, if you want to talk about God cursing, you have to euphemistically say God blessed, kind of like ironically, you know. God blessed Adam with thorns and thistle and on and on. So there's this weird little twist that's set up because of the theology of the Hebrew Bible. And this gave to biblical scholars a wonderful conundrum to play with. Because when is it that a curse can be transformed into a blessing? How does that happen in our life? And if we've ever gone through something that feels like a curse, Or just something that's really, really bad. You know, what we do not want to hear is, well, count your blessings. You know? Like, make it all better somehow for yourself. You know, God just gave you that as a blessing in disguise, or something. You know, we don't want to hear that stuff. That doesn't really resonate for us. So we're left with this really confusing piece just by the text itself. Are we talking about blessing? Are we talking about curse? And like, how is it that a curse is also a blessing? Now, I want to shift gears for a minute because I want to think about this curse, and I want to think about living on the Palouse. Because I grew up on a farm about 7 miles out of town, and my dad grew up on that farm. And when I listen to this curse, it sounds a lot like farming on the Palouse. You know? I mean, it's like there's going to be thistle. Oh my gosh, not thistle, you know? I mean, there could be bindweed in here. There should definitely be some bindweed. We kind of know, a lot of us, what it is to try to work the clay and get something good out of it in a short growing season. A lot of us have tried to do that. And if you've ever known a farmer, which I'm guessing all of you know at least one farmer, I know you do if you're part of this congregation, you know a number of farmers probably. What we also know is that farming is a difficult go. It always has been. There are blessings in farming, and most farmers that I know would never pick any other way to live. But there's a lot of farming that is unknown, that you have no control over, that can sometimes make you feel like you're cursed, but it can be just a very difficult journey to travel as you're trying to do this work of transforming the soil. And yet a lot of us do it. You know, whether you grow like a little pot of petunias, or whether you are farming a piece of land, or whether you have a bigger area that you're working with. Some of us know that when we do that work, it's the thing that makes us feel the most human. It's the place we think about things. It's the thing that helps us to really feel connected beyond ourselves. And I hold myself in that particular place. A little piece of context here. Jonathan and I and Lita live on the very south edge of town. And we have area around our house, and we have a lot that's across from a little road that goes up to a water tower. And this land is solid clay. Solid. I mean, you can't even get a shovel into it. So it's fill from the neighborhood when they were developing the neighborhood. And so it not only has clay, but the lot itself, periodically, out of its bounty, I guess, it'll belch up things. I mean, like a piece of pipe. Could be PVC pipe, it could be a big old piece of metal pipe. Just the other day, that's what I got out of it. It'll belch up a really long beam of wood, all kinds of things. And then lately, because my kids grew up and worked this land, and along with Emma Trade, I would say, they were gonna build a house on this land. And so it belches up things that they kind of buried to build their house. My son liked to bury golf balls there. It belches up golf balls. So there's all this stuff that kind of comes up out of this land. And we decided that we wanted, as we thought about the Palouse, to give back to the Palouse. And what we wanted to do was to transform this into a Palouse prairie. That became our big goal, was to transform this piece of land and some other land around our house into Palouse prairie. So we started researching, and we got involved with a group that you might know of. It's a nonprofit group in the area called the Phoenix Conservancy, who do wonderful work. So they're helping us to they usually plant these little prairies, they call pocket prairies. This one's a little bit bigger than a pocket. But they're helping us to work with this. And then alongside of that, there's another place in our land where it was the driest and the worst. You couldn't even, I tried a drill in it. I couldn't even get a drill to go into it at one point. So that land needed to be rehabilitated. So I started talking to my brother and my sister-in-law who farm, and my dad, about what can we do. And so we put down hay, and we put down We had had to take a tree down in the storms last year, and so we had it chipped. So there's hay and there's chips, and they're covering this piece of land. And then we waited, because nothing happened, of course. And we waited and waited, and then one day I went out there, and there was some fungus, spectacular fungus growing on. I was like, fungus, I've got fungus, you know? I also got a respiratory infection probably from the fungus that's taken a long time to get rid of. But we had this fungus, so that was a good sign that we were on the right track. Things were starting to decompose in there. But then the best thing happened. Just a few weeks ago, I was out thinking about this business of blessings and curses, and especially blessings because of this other service I was doing. And I stuck my spade down in, the shovel down into the earth, and I was expecting fully to not go anywhere, and it went all the way down in, and I was like, oh, this is good. And I pulled it up, and what do you think I found? Worms! So I started doing, like up on our hill, and we live on this access road to a water tower, so it's pretty well walked. I'm like doing a little worm dance, you know, because there had never been life in the soil that I had ever seen. The most that we would occasionally see was a yellow jacket trying to make a hive. And here was this rich soil. And, you know, the transformational agent had nothing to do with Jonathan and myself. It was the worms. They moved in, they eat an enormous amount of stuff. You know, they ate the chips, they ate the hay, they pooped it out. We like to call it worm castings. It's a polite way of saying it. And what we got was this really rich, beautiful soil that we're now going to be able to plant within. So this has been a very interesting process to me to watch. And I believe that this is exactly the process that we're called to go through. I think that we are called to go through this process whenever a blessing or something that we might feel is a curse comes our way. You know, the worm has this superpower of transformation. But Adam also was given this power of transformation. As Adam, as the first human, there is this idea that part of the reason that he's around is to be able to create in positive ways some transformation. So we have this ability, whether we know it or not, to do this transformational work. From the blessings, we can create more blessings. That's the work. They're not for us to smugly hold on to and say, bless my heart. I'm just so happy here in my spot. You know, the worm doesn't do that. The worm just keeps working through the stuff, right? So we too are called to keep working through and to transform the blessing, and also to transform the curse, the bad stuff, into blessing. But again, how do we do that? How do we go through that process? And here is where I look to and remembered this beautiful poem by Marge Piercy, because to me, this is a fantastic piece of interpretation of this very concept of curse and blessing. First, she lists her blessings, and they're not complicated. They're the blessings of the everyday and the commonplace. A ripe tomato. When you think about it, what a blessing. Her cat. I hope your cats are blessings if you have cats. Our cats, all three of them that Lita brought back from Lebanon, they are definitely blessings.
They're also kind of a curse.
Sometimes they're kind of a curse too, is what Lita just said. Yeah, but they're really blessings. And mostly, there is this way that all of these things that Marge Piercy lists and that we might list, they don't have to be the complicated things, and they don't have to be material objects. They're the simple gifts of the everyday and the commonplace. But then she says this, because just to have those things in our world is not enough. That doesn't do it. She says, but the discipline of blessings is to taste each moment, the bitter, the sour, the sweet, and the salty, and to be glad for what does not hurt. The art is in compressing attention into each little and big blossom of the tree of life, to let the tongue sing each fruit, to savor, to find its aroma, and to find its use. Attention is love, what we must give children, mothers, fathers, pets, our friends, the news, the woes of others. What we want to change, and this is the part that really interests me about this, what we want to change, we curse. And then we pick up a tool. Bless whatever you can with your eyes and your hands and your tongue. And if you can't bless it, get ready to make it new. We bless with our full and complete attention. We ingest things. We take them in. We are the little earthworms working our way through stuff. But what we want to change, what we can't take in because it's too much, it's too painful, it's too hard, it's wrong, we cast it out. But then, what do we do next? We pick up a tool. Again, we find that way out of no way. We become agents of transformation. We process blessings into more blessings. And when we're able to do it, we find a tool and we pick it up so that we can also transform the worst of it. And what are our tools? Our tools are right here. Our tools, in a sense, are us. Our tools are a community. Our tools are the shared vision. Our tools are our commitment. Our tools are a sense that we indeed can be these transformational agents of change. And perhaps our tool is knowing that we are given this privilege of doing the work of Adam, of being able to be the transformational work in the world. As Marge Piercy tells it, if you cannot bless it, get ready to make it new. It's the best of being human. It's the way that we change things in our world that need to be changed the most, and it's the work and the joy and the blessing of being the church. Amen.